Hey y'all, Silva here, and welcome to what is obviously not the USS Overlander. I am at home in the office today. Unfortunately, it is both very, very cold outside and we still don't have household income outside. But that means I have plenty of time on my hands. Today, we are going to be using an infrared camera to examine the inside and outside of our Class C RV that is not rated for 4 seasons, and with a temperature difference of about 50 degrees between outside and inside the RV, we're going to try and figure out where we're losing the most heat and what is going to be the most effective way to add some insulation to our rig so that we can be more comfortable in cold climates. As we're looking at this video, you can see the tire is very cold. That's the metal on the rim. You can see that the side of the RV where the actual hatch is for our garage is sitting at about 13 degrees. As we move up and we keep scanning, we see that the side of the RV is very, very cold. We're holding around 10 to 15 degrees on the siding. The dark purple up at the top is the sky. You can also see the house sticking up. You can kind of see our siding. And then we have our bright beaming window. The first round of video I took was with all of the blinds open on the RV. And you can see that there is a huge difference between the temperature of the walls and the temperature of the windows. You can also see the structure of the RV. These are the support beams within the walls. No matter what sort of structure you're going to have, you're going to lose heat out of those support beams. What you see here is the metal vent cover for the propane refrigerator. It's colder because it's metal. And when we scan up, you see that, again, the kitchen window has a drastic temperature difference than the wall of the RV around it. Again, these windows are not covered, but they are closed. Now we get to the door. Holy cow, is the door lit up like a Christmas tree. And this means that we have a significant draft here. I expected the windows to be losing a lot of heat. I did not expect the seals around the door to be this extreme. The frame of the door is really bad, but the window is not. That's because we have a panel of reflectix in the RV window. But you can see that it isn't fitted perfectly, and we're still getting a decent amount of energy or heat leak around the outsides. This is actually really surprising to me. I knew that the door had a little bit of a draft and it wasn't perfect, and that area has always been colder. But I did not realize that it was the actual seal of the door, not the window in the door or the thin door itself. As we move forward, you can see that we're losing a ton of heat through the cab, especially the windows. Now, for the initial video, I did not partition the cab at all, and we don't have any sort of window coverings on the cab. If we were camping, we would have an external window covering that wraps around both side windows and the front window. But I figured I'd leave it off in this scenario to see how much of a difference just partitioning the cab makes in a little bit. So we can really tell here that we're losing a lot of heat through the cab, especially the windows. No big surprise. The front view of the cab shows about the same thing. Obviously, the metal on the grill is going to be very cold. The window is going to be the warmest part, and we're not losing a ton of heat from either the top overhead or the hood itself. It's a little bit hard to see here without context, but what you're looking at is the part of the RV that comes over the top of the truck. And this is the window in that little overhead cubby space. Again, we're looking at 15 to 20 degrees for the RV itself and over 30 degrees for the window. As we look at the side of the RV, this is where the big dinette window is, and you can see that we're losing a ton of heat out of this window. As the propane heater vent comes into frame, everything else looks cold as could be, but the color change only shows relationships that are on the screen as we're looking at it. So when that propane vent comes onto screen, everything else is going to look incredibly cold. But as we get back to just the window in frame, you can see the window and you can see the outline where the metal frame that holds the dinette table that slides up and down is mounted to the wall. Any sort of metal in your RV is going to be leaching heat. When this RV was built, there was not a lot of insulation put in the wall between the fiberglass shell and the finished wall where that metal rack is mounted. But again, this is not a 4 seasons rig. It wasn't built to go camping in 20-degree weather. You get what you pay for. We also have a very dark blob here, and in this case, dark means cold. I believe that this is where our potable water intake valve is. I'm not sure why it's colder than everything else. I think it might be the nature of the plastic versus the fiberglass shell that's on everything else, or it might be that because that area is under the dinette seat, The heat from the inside of the RV isn't actually getting under the seat to be leached out. The tank is definitely empty at this point. If you have a theory for why there's a very cold spot around that inlet, I would love to hear it. So the super hot spot you see here is the exhaust vent for the propane heater. You also see some warmth coming out of the vent cover for the hot water tank. The hot water tank is not running and shouldn't be generating any type of heat of its own. So that means that any heat that we're seeing leach out through that is our warm air from our RV leaving. That's definitely going to be an area that we'll look at a lot more closely when we're trying to insulate better. You continue seeing the walls and the studs. There's nothing too surprising here. And if we look at the back of the RV, same story again. We're looking at about 10 to 15 degrees on the RV wall, and then we're looking at 33 to 34 degrees coming out of the window. We do see a little bit of extra heat loss in the top left corner of the rear here, and that is the top of the bathroom above the shower. When we get to the internal view, I'll show you exactly where that heat loss is coming from. All right, so now we are inside the RV, and this is a view of the floor and the stairs as you exit the RV. So you can see that the floor with carpet is about 27 degrees. But then as soon as we dip into where the actual stairs are, we drop down to 19, and we have areas that go all the way down to 11 degrees. We are losing so much heat out of this door. I know this is blurry, but you can see the carpet squares that I have placed on these two stairs. Even just a tiny bit of carpet is the difference between 11 and 17 degrees on your little footsies. This explains exactly why we've been camping in the winter before, and we've gotten condensation on the inside of our window that has dripped down and frozen to the inside of the door. And there is absolutely nothing stopping all of that cold air from leaching into the RV. As we scan up, you can start to see this panel of reflectix that we have over the door window. And you can see that it actually gets up to 50, 60 degrees. That reflectix was the best idea. I think that was one of the very first modifications we ever did. And that was one of the most effective places we could have possibly put any sort of insulative material, especially reflectix. With the kitchen cabinets, you can see that the back wall is the coldest. My theory with the temperature difference on the back wall where the cabinets meet the walls is those cabinets have to be mounted to the wall in some fashion. My theory is that where all of these cabinets and accessories are mounted into the wall, not only are those metal screws staying colder, but they're also allowing the tiniest bit of airflow that otherwise wouldn't be present. So it's not necessarily the cabinets themselves that are making that mount point colder. I think it's the airflow coming in from how they're mounted, which again, you have to mount your cabinet somehow. The answer is not mounting cabinets. The answer is having a more robust insulation system before you even get to the mounting cabinets parts. This is a run-of-the-line Thor Freedom Elite. This is not a high-class luxury Four Seasons rig. They did not make this to be comfortable at 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So I popped the cabinet open here to have a look in it. The back wall of this cabinet is cold. This is the reason that I added all of the vent panels for each cabinet so that we could equalize some of the temperature. Now, by nature, if we make the cabinets warmer, then we're also going to lose more heat through the wall that's not insulated. The problem is not airflow. The problem is that the walls aren't insulated enough, but again, it wasn't made to be. So this is standing near the very front of the RV and scanning the floor as it goes towards the back. You can see my little feces and my fuzzy slippers at the very bottom there. On our left, you can see the rug that's by the front door, and you can tell that it is a little bit warmer than the floor itself. Interestingly enough, you can also see my little footprints here, which I think is fascinating. This is a thick foam kitchen mat. Again, it is a little bit warmer than the floor around it. And if we poke under the kitchen table, it is frigid. My best guess for this is that the heater is on the other side of the dinette bench, and I didn't have any additional airflow to move that warm air around. So I think that the reason under the kitchen table is so cold in this case is just that the heat isn't possibly getting there. It's not leaching out worse there. As we start scanning more towards the back of the RV, it's much, much brighter. That is because in this view, The propane heater is in the cabinet right over here. So the reason this entire area is warmer than everything else is because that's where the heater's blowing. So to look at this video, I left this vent cover completely uncovered. We're looking at almost a 20-degree difference between the vent cover and the roof itself. Again, you can see the cross hashing of the supports through the roof. And then as we get to the actual bedroom part of the RV, you can see that these open windows are just leaching heat entirely. On this vent, we have the vent cover installed, which is basically a giant thick pillow that has Reflectix on one side. In the summer, you put the Reflectix towards the roof so that the heat bounces off of it and doesn't come in. And in the winter, you put the Reflectix facing inside so that the heat bounces off of it and stays in. You can see a drastic difference between this vent and the uncovered vent. It is still losing a little bit of heat or still letting some cold air in, depending on how you want to look at it. But it is drastically improved over just having a vent open to the elements. As we look at the bathroom, you can tell that we are losing quite a bit of heat out through the shower pan underneath shower. This makes a lot of sense because in the floor underneath the shower, that is where all of the drainage from the entire RV goes to the tanks that are actually underneath the rig, which means by nature there are going to be a ton of holes cut in the floor. This is an area that it would make a lot of sense to work on insulating better, but because of the difficulty of accessing it, I don't know if it's actually a realistic possibility. What we could consider here is just putting down a piece of insulation, just plunking it on the shower pan floor when we're not using the shower. That's actually not a bad idea. Also, the 18 degrees here is a bottle of shower gel that is just plunked on the ground. Because I heated up the RV specifically to make this video, the liquid in that bottle hadn't warmed up to the rest of the RV's ambient temperature yet. We've also got a really low temperature in that back corner. The way that our RV shower is set up is we have our shower pan and then we have walls that go around it, and it's not one unit from floor to ceiling, which means that anywhere there's a crack, that cold air from below the shower where all of the drainage holes are is going to work its way up and through there. I am not sure if sealing the shower wall to the shower pan is a go or not. I don't know if it's that way because it needs to be that way, or if it's that way because that's the cheapest way to make a shower and a shower pan. Either way, if I were going to renovate my RV bathroom, I would pay a lot of attention to both insulating where all of those drainage holes are cut and insulating around the shower pan itself so that none of that cold air can get up into the drainage cubby and then proceed to leak out into the bathroom itself. And here is the top corner of the bathroom, and this is what I mentioned that I would point out that you can literally see from the back view of the RV. In a shower cubby, there was a sort of like finishing fascia panel piece that was at a diagonal angle that was covering the corner where the back wall of the shower met the roof. Because there was a fascia piece covering it, that means that no one took any sort of special care to make those two pieces actually meet each other and seal up. For one reason or another, I took down that cover fascia piece because it was just purely cosmetic, and that showed me that there was a giant gap in that area. Now, the covered fascia piece would have prevented some of that cold air from leaching in, but a 1/4-inch piece of finished plywood is not actually insulative, so it might have band-aided the problem a little bit, but we were still getting that cold air seeping in because the walls aren't insulated. You're starting to see a theme here, aren't you? And then the other giant culprit in the bathroom is the skylight over the shower. It was really easy to find vent covers that just shoved up in the actual vents themselves, but above most RV showers is a sort of faux frosted glass dome that both gives you more headroom in the shower and lets natural light in. I love that feature. It's a great feature, but also there is basically no insulation. If I were going to do everything that I could to keep this RV warm, I would absolutely want to have something covering that dome. You can really see it dramatically when it's in the same frame as the actual vent for the bathroom that has the pillow cover in it with the Reflectix bottom. That vent cover is almost 60 degrees, and you see that deep blue behind it that's telling us that that area over the shower is probably closer to 40. Moving on, this is the bottom of the big mirrored wardrobe. The cubby you're looking at right now holds the hot water heater. We have that opened up because we have the water heater bypassed because it's winter. If we had it closed, the wood panel that hides it would be preventing some of that cold air from coming in. This is also a really important time to note that even if your RV is warm enough to survive, you need to be worried about your water lines freezing. Most water lines in these RVs are made of PEX tubing. It is not insulative. Even though the PEX tubing is going to be more resilient than like copper piping, you don't want to mess around with your pipes freezing. This is a reason to, one, make sure you have warm airflow to any of these areas that your pipes are going to be holding water. And two, if you're going to be out and using your water systems in extreme temperatures, and in this case, bear with me, I'm from Tennessee, extreme means below freezing, know what your RV is capable of. Know if you have a Four Seasons rig. Figure out what areas of your RV are actually going to be warmer than freezing, and know what your limitations are. If this were closed up and we had the RV at a tolerable 60 degrees, and we're out in 20-degree or colder weather, those bits of pipe freeze, and that could be disastrous. You can see as I'm scanning this little cubby area, there are bits back there that are still below freezing, even though the RV itself was up to 65, maybe even 70 degrees. Again, part of this is because I didn't have a whole bunch of airflow pushing that warm air into all the nooks and crannies, but still, this is something that you need to be aware of if you're going to be out in the cold. And then we scan forward to the cabinets over the dinette. Again, you can see the support hashing in the roof. This is as cold as you would expect it to be, especially after you saw it from the outside. You can also see the frame for the dinette table. This is what we saw from the outside. Because this is metal, it's staying cold and it's leaching cold. And then as we pan towards the front of the RV, you can tell that the truck cab is incredibly cold compared to the living space. You can see that the dashboard screen is giving off a little bit of heat, but you're looking at 15 to 26 degrees in the recesses of the floor. Now, I also want to note that the floor of our truck cab has a thick layer of Dynamat, and it has a layer of batting type insulation underneath the floor mat of the truck. So this is best case scenario. We have already put down everything we can to keep heat in this truck and to keep the heat from going out the floor, and it's rough looking. So the first walkthrough had all of the window shades up. After I did those recordings, I closed all the window shades, waited 30 minutes, and then did another walkthrough to see how much just the window shades affected how those windows were losing heat. So I think it did get overall warmer inside the RV during that 30 minutes than it was for the first round of videos. So instead of comparing window temp to window temp, I'm comparing the difference between the window temp and the temperature right next to it, which means that I have to do math, but I'm going to do that for you because I care. So for the back of the RV, the wall temp is 13 degrees and the hottest window temp is 25 degrees. So the temperature difference between the wall and the window went from 19 degrees with the blinds up to 12 degrees with the blinds down. In case you're not tracking the thought process here, it is a little bit convoluted. We want temperatures from the outside to be as cold as possible because that means that our hot air warming the inside of the RV is not leaching through the walls and then leaving. So the colder the window is, or the closer the window temperature is to the wall temperature, the better insulated we are, and the more warmth we're keeping inside our RV. So for the side bedroom window, we're looking at about 12 degrees on the wall. We're looking at 20 to 22 degrees on the window, which means that we have about an 8-degree difference, whereas we had a 13-degree difference before we closed that blind. Kitchen window, 16 degrees on the wall. If we let it play, again, we're looking at 19, 20 degrees up to 23. So we'll call it 21. That one didn't make as much of a difference. We went from 5 degrees difference to 4 degrees difference. Again, those blinds are not going to be near as insulative. They're mostly just keeping out light. Because those window blinds can't permanently be replaced with something that's going to be a thick cloth because it's right next to the propane stove, a window covering to go on that kitchen window while we're parked, while we're not using the stove, should be a top priority. The cab view I think is really interesting here. What we do in the RV is we put a thick duvet insert between the truck cab itself and the rest of the RV. Instead of trying to insulate all through the cab, we just separate the cab off from the rest of the RV living space. And that makes a huge difference. On the first run through, the windows were reading 27 degrees. On this run through, even though I think the interior of the RV cab was warmer than the first one, we're looking at 17 degrees, which is a 10-degree difference of not losing heat through those truck windows. Same thing with the big main window. It was initially 21 degrees. Now we're looking at 16 to 20 degrees. Not quite as significant of a difference, but still every little bit adds up when you're trying to survive. Then if we look at the big dinette window, we go from 14, 15 degree walls to solid 20, 22 degree window. That one is significant. We went from 17 degree difference from wall to window to only a 7 degree difference. I think that this is absolute conclusive proof that one of the very best things you can do to keep your RV warm that requires no permanent changes, no huge mechanical skills, no sort of renovation or construction skills, is to get appropriate window coverings to completely cover up all of those glass windows. So there you have it. This was a very interesting experiment, but I'll be honest, it didn't actually tell me anything too surprising. We knew going into this that we have a Thor Freedom Elite, which is not a top-of-the-line RV. It's not an RV that's made for cold or extreme weather. It is meant to be a budget, standard issue, nice weather camping option. And it is. That being said, we have identified some very obvious places that we can do a little bit better with insulation. The main areas and the easiest areas to tackle are the windows. We also realized that the transparent bubble above the shower is a huge area that we're losing heat, and we discovered that the shower floor itself is letting in a lot of cold air. We also realized that we're losing a lot of heat through our actual RV door. Now, again, we knew this. It's always been coldest next to the door, but we're losing it out of both the stairs and the door itself. So what do we do with all of this information? In the next video, or possibly videos, depending on how productive I can be, we are going to make some insulated window coverings that are custom fit for our RV. We're going to look at some ways that we can cover up the door itself and the stairs, the floor area next to the door where we're losing a ton of our heat. And we're also going to look at putting a covering on the skylight bubble above the shower. Now, that being said, I bet there are products available on the market for each of these problems. But all of these products are going to be done as frugally as possible because, like I said, we're both still unemployed. And while I have plenty of time on my hands, my RV budget is basically zero. We're going to try to accomplish all of these projects spending as little money as possible, using as many repurposed or already present kind of household objects that we already have. And we're going to see how crafty we can be. And in the meantime, while you're waiting on those projects to be completed, filmed, and published, I would love it if you wanted to check out this video from the summer of how we stay cool in the RV when it's incredibly hot outside. If you've made it this far through the video and you don't want to miss more videos on this topic coming out, I would love it if you'd consider subscribing to my channel. The next video or a few videos might be sort of DIY crafty, do-it-yourself tutorial type videos, but trust me, as soon as the opportunity for adventure presents itself again, we'll be out on the road. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll catch you on our next adventure.